Hi, I'm Marc from Vaadin, and I'm going to talk about building apps with Vaadin Copilot today. And this is mostly going to be a live demo, so you'll see me mostly standing here, not running around. But kind of 1 year ago, when many of you were at Vaadin Create, there was no Vaadin Copilot. It was a vision, an idea, and maybe a few prototypes of a few things, but there was no Vaadin Copilot at the time. But here we are, 1 year later, and kind of to start us off here, how many of you have heard about Vaadin Copilot? Yeah, expected. How many have tried Vaadin Copilot? Okay, yes, good. So that's kind of why I will not talk about what Vaadin Copilot is. We'll jump into that later. I'll talk a little bit about why Vaadin Copilot is. And Jonas spoiled this a little bit, but kind of ever since the graphical user interface was invented, we have been trying to build better tools to kind of create these user interfaces. And the reason is kind of that it's a different medium. We're coding in code, in text, and then we have this visual representation. So it's kind of hard to map it in your brain, and you kind of, it gets hard to be productive when you have to jump back and forth and kind of see how it looks, the thing you just kind of imagined while you were typing. So it's about kind of being more productive and iterate quickly and kind of improve the thing you're working on. So as Jonas mentioned, the first commercial interface builder was released in 1988 with the Next operating system, which was Steve Jobs' kind of side quest when he was not at Apple at the time. And that's kind of interesting because that was actually the exact interface builder that Tim Berners-Lee used to build the first web browser. So kind of forces you to think like, what would our work look like today if he didn't have those tools to create it? We can't know, of course, but Jobs recognized the value of kind of this tool and brought it with him to Apple when he went back to Apple. So that's the Apple interface builder. And since then, there's been like a lot of different takes on this, a lot of different visual UI builders, and kind of, you have probably used some yourself. You might even have liked one or two of them, a little bit at least. Vaadin Designer has served us well for many years. And there's kind of different concepts to how you go about solving this problem. And it's always kind of about the friction between the code and the visual representation that you're building. So recently I came across this blog post by Jim Nielsen that I think put this quite nicely, why this is kind of difficult. So he compared it to sanding. Like in woodworking, when you have a piece of wood, you kind of feel it with your hands, and then you take a sandpaper to smooth it out, especially if you have like multiple pieces that need to fit together. You're kind of feeling the edges and trying to get to the fit and feel that you want. So that's what we UI developers actually end up doing very much. We go back and forth, we're sanding the UI. We change a little bit in code, we go back to the UI and see how it feels, and so on. So in 2008, Apple did something interesting again. So they created a live preview next to the code. So while you're coding, the preview updates. And you can also interact with that. And you might have seen this. It was a really, really awesome thing for kind of iOS developers. And some of you might remember our Vaadin Studio exploration that we did, which was kind of around this concept as well. But it turns out that this also has some challenges, especially around kind of state and data and kind of interactions with that. You have to set it up specifically and so on. So we thought, why not take this further? Why not take it a step further than Apple did and allow kind of both code and visual editing in the same thing, in the real UI, not kind of a representation of it, but in the real UI. So with that, let's take a look at how that might look like. So this is going to be the absolutely live demo here session. And what we're going to work on is this application, an internal application for an invented company. And it's kind of, we're working on this when we have time, like at conferences. And I have the application running here in IntelliJ, and we are going to try to address some issues that have come in. So the first issue is just to add a banner to the welcome screen. So that seems easy enough. So first, let's take a look here. We have the application. We have found the welcome screen. It's up and running. You can see it's running in development mode because I have the little button here. And now if I press this, I will actually activate Copilot. So now when I hover the UI, I can see kind of the structure, kind of hover over different things and see what they are. And also here to the right, I have a bunch of tools that I can use, like an outline that also shows the structure. To the right, I have even more tools I can use. So what we're going to do actually right now is try to just, what if I copy this image and kind of select something here, and I'm going to paste. And with any luck, you can see IntelliJ being happy down in the bottom, jumping up and down. And here we have the image. And actually, I see I did a mistake, so it's not where I wanted it. So I can just go ahead and grab that and drag it. So we have drag and drop right away. And so what did this actually do? Well, we can go to source, and it will take me to the place that's added in my code. And you can see right now that this is a Java view. So the first version of Copilot, as many of you might know, was focused on Hill and did just Hill views. And now in 24.5, we have full support for Flow as well. So now we have, it has added an image to our UI in the position I wanted it, and it has also imported the image into my project. I can do other things as well, so I realize here while I'm kind of sanding this UI that I made a typo. So I probably want to connect with your colleagues, so you can also update text within the UI right away as well. We're going to have to, because we're talking about Java now, and as Jonas mentioned, this tool is built so that your source is the source of truth. So we update the code, then we redeploy. So you get, what you see is really what you get, not a representation of it. But that actually requires quite quick redeploys, as you might imagine. So you want that any time you're kind of editing Java code and making a UI, you want to see it updating. But when you're dragging and dropping and so on, it's especially important. So what we did is we added this. You don't even have to have Copilot on, actually. We have this kind of little development workflow thing that will help you set this up. So maybe many of you are using JRebel. This will also help you set up the HotSwap agent, which is a free version of the same thing. So basically you install the plugin that we have for your IDE, and it will kind of set up this for you. And the only thing special you need to do is when you run your project, you will have this debug using HotSwap agent. And that will, well, many of you know how JRebel works and so on, so that will speed up the redeploys or hot swapping of the changes we make. And I have to do a little side note as well that if some of you have recently tried Copilot, IntelliJ had a bug in the previous version, which I think is 2024.2.3, which affected hot swapping. So if you are seeing problems with hot swapping, update. I think a week or two ago they released the 2.4 release, which has fixed this. So just a quick heads up. Okay, so I think we are kind of done with the banner issue. Next up, we have this editor that we are supposed to create. So it's a CRUD. It's for the admins, so they can change the employees, but it's not done. So let's take a look at what that might entail. So here we have kind of, employees, it's a CRUD. I can select things, but the editor seems to be empty here. So, and this is a thing, I'm gonna use the shortcut to activate Copilot. If you are using Copilot, it's intended to just quickly be there to help you, so it's a good idea to learn the shortcut. So I can inspect kind of that this seems to be a div where I could kind of start building this UI for editing these. So what I'm going to do actually right now is I'm going to go find the entity. So the employee that's been used to create that grid and everything, that's representing the employee. I'm going to take that and maneuvering this setup with just one screen. I'm going to drop it in the place where I want this to end up. So now it actually looked at the entity and guessed what fields and kind of matched the names to that. So we're kind of half done already, but I saw like there was an annoying comment here as well that I should add some icons. But the guy hasn't actually said which icons. He leaves this to me, of course. So I think what I'm going to do with that is we have this. I'm going to show you here and not use the shortcut. Toggle command window, so that's a good idea to learn the shortcut for. This is the AI prompt where you can kind of input freeform prompts to the AI. So we're going to hope that it's a good day today and just kind of give that text to the AI. Instead of looking up the documentation for icons and looking for those icons and kind of choosing which ones I would use, you can see that it seems like it did an okay job. At least now somebody else is responsible to telling me that I had the wrong icon. So maybe just to show you a little bit more here, we can go to the source and see that it has our editor here, our CRUD is divided into a little bit of methods that are building the UI, so it's not good to put everything in one chunk. And Copilot actually figured out that, okay, the editor layout should end up with the rest of the editor layout stuff. So there's a limit to this. In Java, you can kind of structure your code in very many different ways. So you have to help it sometimes a little bit. And we're working on kind of improving everything. But it kind of tries to see where the things next to what you're adding was. Right now, we're getting to kind of the most annoying part of my demo here. And the next version of Copilot is going to help with this. But we need to use the binder to bind these fields. So right now, I'm just going to kind of, to do that, I need to move all my fields to class members. So this is a little bit annoying here. Has nothing to do actually with the demo, but I still want to show kind of the complete way. So trying here live to select all the rows that are components. One more. Here we go. Did I miss something? I missed something. Yes, thank you. Let's see how that works. So we move those up here somewhere. Okay, we have the save button, so let's put it here. And it seems green again. So let's go find, we already have the grid and so on, so the employee exists and everything. So let's go find, here we have kind of the binder set up for the employee entity. And somebody has nicely added some code here. It's not very complicated. We'll use the bind instance field now. and kind of and this would be much more fun if I had two screens, but with any luck, now it's actually filling in those fields. Well, let me turn off Copilot so I can interact with the application. So now we have wired up the form. Because, of course, we created the form fields from the entity, the names will match and everything aligns, which is kind of nice. I think we completed that issue as well. So next, it turns out that we did a lot of unnecessary work. Somebody has called a designer to design a profile page, which is kind of the same thing as our admin page. So we'll have to kind of undo all the things here that we did and take a look at what the designer has made for us. Maybe the binder thing as well, and see if we're back at kind of, yeah, it updates. Nice. So a designer has designed something. It's in Figma, so let's go and see what that is. Many of you are probably familiar with Figma. It's kind of a free-form drawing tool that designers like to use to draw UIs. It's very nice. You can use it as I said, as a free-form drawing tool, so you can draw a box. And if you make a UI like that, the developer will have a lot of work to implement it again. So a better thing to do is if you have a design system. So we have the Vaadin design system set up in Figma, so you can use it. That's basically pre-drawn our components. And this file here is using that. So you can see the structure of the form here, but then we have the assets, which is the Vaadin design system. And I can go ahead and kind of find all the components, like the variations of button. And when I drag in that, I don't need to start from scratch. It's like a Vaadin button. I can change the caption and so on. One thing is that the designer can still kind of make insane placements and so on. It's a free-form drawing tool. Luckily for us, this designer has kind of structured the UI a little bit. So you can see there's kind of like layouts in here. It's called auto layouts, and it's a way to structure things in Figma. But yeah, it's a little bit of a mismatch because it's a free-form drawing tool and so on. But I think our designer knows what he's doing, so we're going to try this. We're going to kind of find the drill down to the part of the form that we want. We don't want the whole application. I'm going to copy this from Figma, and let's try to kind of enable Copilot and paste from Figma this time. And that seems to work. So we now have Figma import from into Copilot. So that will actually create the same sort of code that you saw from the entity. So if somebody has designed something, you can just use that. In this instance, we're lucky that the designer has used the exact same names for the fields, which will align nicely in the code. If there is a mismatch, you will have to rename something or kind of configure binder, but that's a smaller problem. That was probably that issue. So we're making good progress here. Next up, pretty vague. Somebody is telling us to create the directory view, which is where the employees find each other and kind of are able to contact each other and so on. Now, it doesn't look like a designer has been designing this. It's more like project manager or something. But anyway, so we're going to have to get a little bit creative here. So back in my application here, enable Copilot, we have a root panel here. I'm going to pop that out so you can see it a little bit better. But we can see kind of all the views and routes to those that we have. And I'm just going to go ahead and create a new one. directory. And just to get some variation here, I'm going to make this a Hilla view and hit create. And you saw the view appeared here immediately. I can also navigate here while Copilot is on, so we can get to that view. And it's a little bit boring, so for the next step, we're going to use the palette, which has all the regular Vaadin components. You can drag them in. But also, if I scroll down here, you can see that it has a lot of stuff. It has charts. It has pretty much everything. It also has a section called composites. So I'm thinking maybe we could use something from here. So I mean, we look at our design. Yeah, maybe a card. It has a card list. So I'm just going to go ahead and see what that looks like. And if I mean, yeah, maybe start from this. It seems to be responsive and everything, so this is going to be a pretty nice starting point for our thing. Let's clean up a little bit, because I mean, this has 4. We don't need 4, we need many, so let's start with 1 and then add the code later on. So I can go up here and see, yeah, that it's a list. So I'm going to remove the list items that I don't need, and kind of I can go ahead here and kind of visualize a little bit what I want to do. So maybe I want the the name to be here, but maybe at this point we could skip over to the code and take a look. So yeah, this is React code. Some of you love it, some maybe not so much. So we can see here it's an unordered list with that one list item inside. And here we have these kind of, that's where I put my name, and here we can kind of roll and kind of start coding. But maybe kind of when I'm visualizing this, it's easier, like if I had 2 screens now, we could see me changing it, but I can go back here and kind of, I can go back and forth and do the changes wherever I feel like it. So maybe I kind of think I need 4 different things. Remembering what we had in the grid, we might have maybe which city this person is working in, and kind of a phone number, and email, usually email. Buttons, I think we could kind of maybe do a call button and an email button. And kind of, I can keep going here and kind of try to get to something that matches the nice drawing. Or I can hop the code as well and start, like when I get it to a specific point and want to wire up the code, so maybe we should do that now. So go to source again, I get back here, and kind of, this point, you don't want to see me typoing stuff here, so I'm going to actually copy-paste a few things. So we import the employee endpoint. And how do we know to import the employee endpoint? Well, there is, if we scroll down here, let me close a few things, pop that out so you can see better. There is a UI services panel that shows us a little bit what we have available. So it tells me we already have the employee endpoint for the CRUD view, so I can use that, and it has a list method. So let's use that. So that's kind of, I import the employee endpoint. We're going to need the actual employee to use. We're going to have some things for deciding how to list things, and some React stuff that we're going to look at now. So if I cheat again and paste in some code, let me format that. Paste in some code here. So this is the employees list, and it's using a signal like Leif was talking about. So you can, it kind of, the list will update, and React will know when things have been updated, so they will automatically update. Then we have our method that's fetching things, not very exciting here. It's using the employee endpoint list and configuring a few of those things just however we want to list our employees. Nothing exciting. Then we have the use effect hook, kind of a life cycle thing in React where we're actually going to fetch those employees. And then we're going to have to do some coding because we need to loop over the thing. Oops. We're going to kind of take the employees that has magically updated the value from that because it's a signal and kind of loop over that with our CRUD element and be able to use the information. We need to terminate that kind of statement somewhere around here. And one thing that if you try to do this and you're not a React person, React needs a key to the element. Otherwise, well, I will show you what happens otherwise. So now we can use the employee that we're looping over here, and I'm going to use the employee ID for kind of a unique identifier, and save that, and maybe at this point we can go and see. This is what happened if you don't add the key. So before I actually added the key, it did this, so now I have to press reload. But now I get kind of a lot of, those are all our employees, but not wired up yet. So let's just, this is maybe the boring part, but let's just add a little bit more kind of features here. So let's do the photo first. So we want the photo. So I already have images of the employees where we imported the image already. So in images, it's based on the employee ID. So let's use that. Don't need an alt. And now we're kind of just going to start wiring up here. Employee first name. Last name. Yeah, I'm just usually don't live code. I'm no Josh Long, so bear with me here. Yes, role. We were planning to make a city here. We can see in a minute how it actually pans out, and if we are pleased. Maybe we add a HR here to divide kind of. Then we have our oops, let's not stop the whole thing. I do this to show you that it's actually live. Small mistakes. So very exciting stuff here now. And now we're done, I think. Let's hop over and see. So now we are kind of, we get images, we get some dummy data. And why I actually did that and wanted to show kind of when it's wired up is, now this is kind of data bound, so I can't actually edit these texts anymore because obviously it's not a text anymore, it's data bound. But I can still kind of edit if I want to kind of modify the alignment, for instance, or other kind of layout things. I can still do that. And you see then all the items are updated. So I can kind of, when I have these fuzzy instructions, I can kind of sand the UI and choose where I sand the code or here live or however I want to do it. So I think next, these button here look a little bit kind of out of place maybe. So I'm gonna pop out the theme editor here. So with my button selected, I can kind of make some changes to this. So maybe I want, well, I definitely don't want a border radius for it. Oops. I want kind of, it doesn't have to be so huge. well, that will be good enough. So now I edited that button. And if we hop over to the IDE, we can see that, yeah, it created some CSS for us, so we don't have to do that. And here in my view, it added a class name here. So let's just here in code go ahead and add it to the other button. And kind of now I have two buttons that should have the same styles. And the other thing I want to actually show you here is I can kind of pick and choose how I do these things. So if I feel like I want to use the browser inspector, so the DevTools inspector here, so I have the Vaadin button selected, and you can see kind of what it's added to our directory button. I can keep kind of editing here if I feel like that. So flex, grow, 1, and then we get them kind of aligned, and maybe we do background color. Yeah, let's do the Alice blue here, just so we see that we have made some changes now. And as you all know, if I press reload now, all those changes are gone. And quite often, if you use the browser inspector to edit things, you kind of end up changing many things. And that's kind of a pain then to manually copy into your styles. So what we have done is, back to the theme editor, we have this browser inspector thing, which actually realizes you have now manually touched some things. These have changed. Do you want to write them to the project? Yes, I do. And it will apply. And with any luck, those are now programmed. Okay. Thank you. Apparently many use the browser inspector. Have the same problems I have. Yes, so we can keep going here. We can kind of see now, okay, let's maybe remove some padding. It also has a gap here. Let's remove that and kind of turn it off, and we can see, well, it's not, that doesn't look very good now. So let's actually go manually in here, and maybe what I was going for is kind of have a hover effect instead and apply some of these. Actually, I'm just going to apply the nice Alice blue here to save time. Back to the application, and I can kind of pick and choose like the context I'm working in, or kind of what feels more natural, if I'm doing it right in the application, if I'm doing it in CSS, if I'm doing the browser inspector. And kind of when I get to know all these things, it's kind of easy to choose which one is convenient to do. Let's do just some more things here. So let's enable Copilot again. And I can add a click listener, which is kind of a convenience thing just to get things added. And I can also kind of make use of other, so that's GitHub Copilot or IntelliJ's Copilot or something. I don't care. It looks pretty promising. So let's go back here, do the same thing to the other. Oh, no, that was not what I was going to do. I was going to add a click listener. To the email button, and we get the same completion here. So with any luck, let's turn up. So here's our kind of responsive, hopefully, display with some information. And if I click the call button, I don't think I'm going to do a FaceTime to that number right now, but maybe an email. We can send an email. Yeah, that's operating correctly. So that's kind of how you can kind of iterate quickly with this and kind of, not there, yeah. And I'm going to consider that closed now. We could go on and kind of there's a lot of features in Copilot, so I hope that's kind of giving you an idea that you don't have to use everything. You can kind of pick and choose when is the appropriate time for which features. And the idea is you can kind of quickly call on it when you realize, hey, now is the time that I wanted to, that I can kind of benefit from this. So just kind of quickly, a little bit of an overview. We didn't use the outline. That's outlining the structure of the application. Sometimes it's easier to drop things to an exact position instead of how it looks on the screen. The palette we used the roots here, and we used the UI services panel. Then we have on the bottom, actually right now, there's just a log where you can kind of get some relevant information if you are, well, in this case, calling an endpoint. And to the right, there's also, we have this documentation thing. So if I select a Vaadin component, it will fetch the documentation and kind of show you a little bit of that, so it's easier to find. The theme editor would need a little bit of a separate presentation. It has a lot of things you can do here. It kind of shows the different parts of the components. So if a component has kind of, well, you can see it has the root element here, and then you can separately the label and so on, and complex components, you can see more things. You can adjust the global theme, and we saw the browser inspector. The info panel is good if you're going to do an error report, or if hot swap is not working, you can see which version is in use and so on. So that's something to keep in mind. The accessibility checker will help you kind of work on making better accessibility for your application. It's very picky, so it will tell you what to do. UI test generation, Manolo has a session on that tomorrow, I think. So that's interesting to see. I will not show that now because go see that session. Same with internationalization. Rolf has a session 15 past 2 to after the afternoon coffee break. Yes, he's nodding. And then last, I wanted a little bit to kind of also talk about, so we just briefly showed kind of one AI prompt here. So the free-form kind of AI prompting you can use for a lot of things, but as you know, sometimes it works, and depending on what you're asking, it might not work as well. Usually it does something good, and you can kind of hop to code and fix it. Sometimes not at all, and you kind of get a feel for it, which are the things that you kind of can benefit from most. So often those are the things where you will have to go through and do some boring stuff or kind of choose icons like I did. But yeah, it can be really handy, and we have already seen that the models are getting better and better. This is automatically getting better and better at doing things. So just a brief demo of that. So that actually is Vaadin Copilot. So it's definitely not a no-code tool. It's not even a low-code tool. It's more like kind of a more time tool. Did I say that? So more time for sanding, more time for kind of crafting better UIs and kind of making impactful things, and hopefully, like Jonas was talking about, those consumer UIs. So again, that you can create those instead of, and kind of have a little bit more time, or kind of just quickly get it a little bit more longer. So maybe you can make kind of more impactful things, and maybe it can even help some of you to be kind of the next Tim Berners-Lee of your own domain. Who knows? That's what we are hoping for, anyway. So kind of last, I'm going here to do some obligatory facts. Vaadin Copilot is a commercial product, or you can use when it starts modifying your code, then you need to kind of have a subscription and you need to log in and so on. So it's available in the very affordable plus tier and everything above, so you might already have it. There's also a 3-day, no questions asked, kick the tires kind of, click one button and try it for 3 days, so you can kind of see what it actually is, because it's a little bit different than maybe the tools you have used previously. And so, yeah, and then you can kind of extend your trial to up to 90 days by kind of logging in and so on. So we really hope that you would kind of give it a spin and see kind of how it could fit into your workflow, and kind of most importantly give feedback, because it's, as we said, it's a really new product. It didn't exist at the last Vaadin Create, but we have reserved a lot of resources for this, and we're going to keep improving it. So now is a really good time to help us steer kind of the direction of this. And to that point, if you find a time to kind of try it out here at the conference, feel free and see if you can grab a DevRel or a product manager or somebody to kind of sit with you and go through that. That would be really interesting for us. So yeah, I think that's pretty much Vaadin Copilot, and I don't know if we are doing any questions or anything here. If not, then we will have kind of saved back the time that we lost, because we are 1 minute early, I think. Thank you.